I always have a lot of questions, and the questions are about who we are and where we came from and how that led up to what's happening now so that we can figure out how to get out of here. And during that research that we did with the bog, I met with many clients and the group that we had that was talking on Skype. And one of my clients made a very interesting discovery. And again, the reason that we were studying the bog is that we were trying to find like those parts of ourselves that have been traumatized within this realm, remember that, and pull ourselves up out of here so that we're not stuck by some part of your actual physical body being ritually tortured and then placed under water and staked down so that they can hold you here. Because as I said, the pods that the remote viewers are seeing of these souls, I believe are actually in bogs and that they're being kept here. The other research that I've been doing is about the Selkies, and I put up a video called The Secret of Roan Inish. And you can watch that. But one of my friends did a way of finding her bog body by asking, first of all, do I have a bog body? Is there an aspect of myself that has been like marked and made to ingest some strange stuff and then ritually mutilated and then staked down under the water? Right? So did that happen to me? Do you have a feeling for that? And in some charts I can see it, and I've told people that I can see that and that they should look into that. The way that this friend did it is she held out a map and then she held like a pendulum, a crystal tied to a string, but you can also do like dowsing rods. I have copper dowsing rods that tell me just about anything and I can find locations for. But she held the string over like a big world map. See, where do I have a bog buddy and where is it? And then the pendulum could answer her. And she found that one of her bodies was off the coast of Nova Scotia. So she started doing research about Nova Scotia. And she sent me that link and she explained to me that there were these seals off of Sable Island that were ritually murdered. And the researcher in 1993 named Zoe Lucas found that these seals had like strange corkscrew mutilations through their skin, okay? And when she started looking, at first she thought there were just 400 like mutilated seal carcasses, like really gross and disgusting. But when they started to really look into it, from 1993 to 2011, they found over 4,000 ritually murdered seals. Why? And the interesting thing was that they were mostly female, pregnant females, and pups. So very few males. So they looked in all kinds of theories and they tried to figure it out. Was it like boat propellers? Was it sharks? Was it male aggressive seals? And everywhere they looked, they could not figure out how these skins were sharply incised and like a corkscrew ruined the skin of the body of the female Selkie, the female seal. But that is my topic today, is who are we? Where did we come from? And how do we get out of here? So down that road, after the bog, I had some other things. I was in a big transition. I've moved, I'm in a different location. And I had to do a lot of like bog body research myself. So I traveled quite a bit, over 1,000 miles. And I really felt into some things about this whole idea of where are our original bodies? What is it that's holding us down in here? What is it that like loops you back into the re-incarceration reel? And I thought, maybe I should investigate. Who am I? Who am I? So I definitely have bog bodies, and so does my mother. And that was really interesting. And then remember when I was talking about the Nog, that everything comes from the mitochondrial DNA. And I still insist that the Anunnaki were here harvesting our gold. Kind of like genetically, they had a fallen race and they were trying to merge with us and take our light and get our gold and become a better race themselves. Now they've flipped it all over and now say that they are our creators and that we have to become them and become AB negative, Vanir Asir, like werewolf, vampire, cyborg things, which I don't agree with either. I think we should all be unique and diverse, which was the original template. So now I don't often get sessions with people, and I don't advise like channelers or psychics or Akashic record readers, because I think they're just getting like the CIA zeros and ones. But I do trust astrology of a good astrologer who can do the asteroids. And I do trust also a particular ancestry site that I have just come upon because my friend suggested me that I do it and figure out what are my haplogroups and how did I get here. So our history is actually mythology. So what we've been told is the myths, the creation stories, the stories that come out of Greece and ancient Egypt, and the old stories, the folklore, the tales that we've been told about fairies and selkies and mermaids and all of that kind of stuff are just stories. But now I have the experience that that is in fact our history. So we get distracted here by looking at politics and also religion. And as I said, the Jesus program, which is now creating an antichrist because we're not looking for the divinity within. We're waiting for some Messiah to arrive and fix it, which becomes the antichrist program. So anyways, in the one session that I did pay for quite some time ago, I asked for this woman who seemed quite gifted to do a painting of a soul portrait for me. And, you know, I can do my own astrology. I can get my own, like, material that I need to get and reclaim my soul parts. I'm a very good shaman. I'm a great oracle. I can see. I'm a great seer. But I wanted to see what she saw, because all my friends were like getting like dragons and reptilians and Pleiadians and light language star beings from all different places. And this woman, whose name is Nalini, is quite gifted, but when she did mine, she was like, I don't know, I've never seen anything like this. You're not a being. I don't know what you are. You are the black pearl at the bottom of the ocean. So if you didn't get to see that long enough, it's on my Vimeo account, and it used to be on my website before my website was taken down. So she couldn't even like figure out what I am. So she was like, I don't know, like, you're not in anything. You're something that is under the water, and it seems like you make your own light, because if you look at it, it's a black pearl, but there's this beautiful light, like a sun, deep under the ocean. She said at the bottom of the ocean. And that I generate my own light from this black pearl. So when I was talking to my friend who, you know, had told me to do my haplogroups on this ancestry site, I was like, you know, I don't feel like a Pleiadian or a Sirian or an Andromedan. I mean, I'm connected to Andromeda and I understand that star system, but I don't feel like any of those. I really feel like this nothingness in the great consciousness that of all that is, like the great ocean of consciousness, this nothingness. And I don't identify with any of these, like, you know, animations or avatars that we might be. So I've been thinking about that a lot, and then this whole thing of like, why would I have a bog body? And then why is it the mitochondrial DNA is so important to the Nog? Like, that only comes from your mother, okay? So then my friend told me to get this book, Skota. And in this book, it very clearly explains that there were two different like breakaway civilizations of ancient Egypt. And one of them came up to Western Scotland and Ireland. And that was the King Arthur Pendragon line of their version of Jesus. And what was interesting about that is that throughout this book, he explains that they had to marry their own daughters. Like this one pharaoh married 3 of his own daughters. One person was apparently the wife of both the father and her son. So they had to like marry into the female line. It kind of didn't matter where they got their men from. Like they could be like a Persian or a Illyrian, which is like Greece, or, you know, different places they could bring in their boys, but the female line was very important. And then this author goes on to say that the Pendragon Jesus, you know, from the House of Camelot, he married his sister, which is interesting because do you remember in like the Mist of Avalon and the whole story of King Arthur, if you read the Mist of Avalon, he actually gets adorned as the Stag King, and he comes into a cave and he has sex with his own sister, okay, Morgane. And then they have, you know, this holy child who ends up being a little bit like inbred and a little bit strange in the head. So that was true of all the Egyptians. So these people that we are worshipping as the Messiah, these Jesus types, they were all a little bit strange. They were inbred because they needed their mitochondrial DNA from the female line. So that's where I think some incest comes from. I actually think about like the incest in families where a father will have sex with its own daughter. I think there is something deep and horrible in our memory of being used as sex slaves, but I'm going to back up behind that now. I do believe that prior to the Anunnaki draconian invasion, I'm going to call it, they call it a defeat. You know, they defeated the Lyrans and the Pleiadians here, who were the Emerald Covenant race. Anyways, when they came, we were all shifters. So that gets into the Sarah J. Maas Crescent City series that I showed you, one of the books, The House of the Flame and Shadow, where there were fae, there were dragons, there were viper queens, there were mer people, you know, like fish people, sobeks, which were the crocodile people. And we were all here because I think it was like truly like the cosmic salon of the big Star Wars bar. Like everybody was here, but you looked like a human. You know, the spider people, like they were all here. And that's where our mythology is actually our history. Well, why did these Egyptians have to keep marrying their own mother or their own sister or their 3 daughters? Like, holy crap. It's because where did the female line come from? I think we were all Mer. I think we were shifters, and I've done a lot of Lemurian Atlantean workshops, and I've been asked to do them in group format, but I've also made my own videos about that. And my experience with this is that that is in fact what happened. It was the rape of the sea nymphs. And because we just had this new moon eclipse with sun and moon at Satis with Chiron, which is the hybridized rape creature of the rape of the sea nymphs, who then gets outcast by his mother, I've talked a lot about the rape of the sea nymphs. And that the sea nymphs were able to shift. They could be on land or they can be in water, which goes into those stories of the Selkies. And my only feeling of what I was I was kind of this Mother Ocean being, you know, very cosmic, and my north node is in Pisces, so it's that whole like big cosmic ocean playing down here in this phantom earth. And I still believe this is a copy of something that's original, and we've come back into this to like fix things, okay, and pull parts of ourselves out like those mutilated seals. So the Selkie story is that if you hide their skin under an oak tree, or somewhere, they can't go back into their human form. So as I'm like pulling back through the layers of who and what I am and why were the women used like this, it's because we were the original light. And as I've said to some clients and my great cosmic mother, I think we were all females at one point here, and we reproduced from our mitochondrial DNA. And I did that research. There's actually a being, I was going to call her a specter, but a being from Bavaria. And again, that's where a lot of the Illuminati lines center, in Bavaria. Bavaria is an asteroid conjunct Donald Trump's Mars. So the Bavarians seem to have this also interesting, like Danielle Steele stories of like the ancestors that were a lot of different species hiding in castles and in the mountains, and they had the need to breed with their own species. So this person, Maria Rosenthal from the 1700s, apparently had immaculate conception, like a crocodile, and we talked about this before. 99.9% of the DNA of the child was her own. And, back then they had to check you to see if you were really a virgin, like all that kind of stuff, So she was authenticated as a virgin, but they cut the baby out and she bled to death. But that baby also had parthenogenetic qualities where she also produced a baby. And in one picture that I saw, it was a black boy and she was a white woman. And I was like, wow, how does that happen? Where does that come from in your womb without even a partner, that you could produce, like, be a white woman and have like an Afro-Asiatic child with black skin? Interesting, very interesting. Well, the whole story of the Selkies and the secret of their own Inish is every once in a while they produce a dark one. Very interesting. And that dark one has like special gifts, super interesting gifts. And I've told you before, my father had black, kinky, Afro-Asiatic hair. Like he looks like somebody right out of Egypt. Okay, and I got the green eyes and the whatever my multicolored hair is. I think I'm gonna go get it cut today, so say goodbye to my hair. So anyways, so I'm going, wow, what is this place, and why the mitochondrial DNA? Like, why were they inbreeding so often to create this, like, Pendragon and then the other dragon from the House of Solomon, and they were competing, and they're still competing. This is still going on. It's such bullshit. Anyways, so the black child, the little boy, was taken from her and is still like hidden. Like nobody knows where this child is, because then it's like the Holy Grail, the holy blood, the dragon lines, all that identity crisis baloney that goes on here with, I'm the holy blood and the holy grail, and I'm the Melusine, and the vampires all want to drink my blood. Like it's the weirdest stuff ever. But still, like, how did this happen? How did we get here, and how do we get out? So to me, figuring this all out is like getting my silky skin back on, getting my, whatever I was, sea creature. I've always very much identified with the manatees. I just love the manatees. I'll kayak, along with the manatees, and I'll be like in the river for a full mile, and and I'm like communicating with this manatee, and they'll follow me. I mean, they're, and you all know this. You've been out in the ocean with the dolphins and the whales and so forth, and they're very interactive. Like, I believe we were all beings of the sea. Whether you call that the Selkies or the Lemurians or the Atlanteans, I think Earth was a shifter reality where we could be anything, and we could also come and go and leave this place when we wanted to. And then, it's very clear from the Anunnaki Draconian line, they set up all these structures of, no, you have to pass tests, you have to reincarnate, you have to finish your karma. It's like this weird religious stuff. All of it is baloney. Meanwhile, they're marrying their own daughters. Now remember the trumpet? This is a huge controversy. And he was like, oh yeah, I would marry my daughter. Very interesting. You know, and in those slips that come out of their mouth is like they inbred so hard that they became psychopaths. And I don't like to use like terms like that again. And I'm not into labeling anybody like that because I think that it's all going to be in the chart and, you know, whatever. I hate to use those terms, but I think he's a psychopath. And so I asked my dear friend who I often study with her and ask her questions. Well, how did they become so evil? And she said the whole experiment here was that the Anunnaki draconians, and these might not be her exact words, but this is my understanding, is the draconians are demons, and they need to like hybridize themselves into us to get what's called the light of man. But if they keep interbreeding, they end up becoming psychopathic, and they have a lot of mental illnesses, and as I said, their genitalia switches back and forth, and it doesn't work real well. And they're kind of a created species, like they're trying to fix themselves. So when I did my haplogroups, like the long and the short of it, and only what I can understand, because again, I'm still trying to study this. It's going to take me a while. I'm not going to be able to do yours. I'm really an astrologer, but as we did Donald Trump's, and you can see all the asteroids are there, if you know how to do the asteroids, you can do them yourself and just like, where do you feel like you're from? And you can run that asteroid, but don't get overly identified with it because there's layers and layers and layers. And still one of my students did my asteroids this week, and I was like, a whole other layer. And how long have I been studying my chart? 40 years. So you're going to study your chart for the next 40 years. Okay, it's not like you're going to have one session and then you know what your chart says. There are layers and layers and layers of like archetypes that combine into kind of a signature or like a recipe in your chart. And my student did mine this week, and she found like all these incredible like Enlightenment thinkers everywhere, like Voltaire, like E.E. Cummings, some different Enlightenment thinkers are all over my chart. And when I did my ancestry, you spit in a cup, but then you take that information and you put it into this other site that actually does your haplogroups and your mitochondrial DNA. And I was quite surprised that I'm not from Adam and Eve. I'm not from Cain and Abel. I'm from Ursula. So I'm like, I'm from Ursula? I'm not from mitochondrial Eve? Like, what am I then? I'm from Ursula? What's an Ursula? She's a sea witch. My mitochondrial DNA from Ursula, the sea witch. I'm really embarrassed actually to say this because I don't like to identify. And I'm not even identified with that. It's just like, that's so weird that would come up. So in fact, I am from the Mer line. I am literally a Merovingian, folks. Just like, guess who? Donald Trump. Except my line went under the hill. Like my line went underground. We were not trying to inbreed. And so then I started to go in my mind like, what the heck? Under the hill? What does that mean? Whereas his line, like all the royals, were interbreeding. They were checking everyone's DNA. They had to make sure that they made this incredible line and lineage. Well, remember the stories of the Tuatha De Danann, and they went under the hill. And I was always like, what does that mean? Like, what does it mean they went under the hill? Are they like hiding under Tara, like, in some hill in Ireland? Like, what does that mean? And I started to think, and, I'll spend weeks on this, just like holding the question and falling asleep and then doing some research and then looking at pictures and then looking at classical art and trying to figure it out. And I will do it within myself. I don't want anyone else's zeros and ones like telling my story. So I will talk with one trusted friend and we'll figure it out and she'll help me. And that's my process. But so basically, under the hill, my people were just like rednecks. I gotta tell you, honestly, if you know my family, they're just like rednecks. My mother's father was a coal miner and my father was a salt miner. Under the hill. What? Whoa. Is that what under the hill means? Okay, so Dad's dad was also a salt miner and his name was Harold. Dad's name was Richard. I've already told you all that. And my mother's grandfather, they were coal miners from Pennsylvania. You know, like not a lot going on, folks. We were under the hill, like blue-collar laborers. And my dad had that particular, like, black man hairdo, you know, like he, good-looking black man, you know. And he was the only one. So, again, he was like the dark one, the Selkie that gets born every once in a while. And Grandpa Harold didn't like him because he didn't think he was his own child, because he looked like a black man. And for years, we've been playing around with this going, did Grandma have an affair? You know, Grandma liked to go, you know, to the bar. She was actually a bartender. Something, you know. So I'm like, why did Dad come out as a dark one? Oh, are we Selkies? All right. So then my friend sent me a picture, which is a statue that I've been obsessed with for years, of a woman coming out of her skin, and you can almost see her tail on the rock. And I would watch this in the, you know, this woman was singing up there, and she was singing the story of this sorcerer wizard, and she was lured up out of the ocean, and then he took her and, you know, ravaged her, and her skin was missing, and she was enthralled by him, and so forth, and there became the merging of what I call the fallen angels with the women of the sea. And we were all women of the sea. So you think that you're just up on land now and you have two legs. Well, Ursula, if you look into her mythology, she granted the ability for us to come up on land for about 12 hours based on the tides, and you had to catch the tide to go back out, and you had to get your proper skin back on. So anyways, what is this mythology? I don't have answers for you right now. I have questions, and I wanted to point out, because everybody's always confused about these Jesus guys, you know, the Nog line of the Draconians. And who were they? But I think they had to marry into the Mer line, the female water beings, and that they still do, and that's where the whole incest came that created a lot of psychopathic lines. My line is not like that, although I'm apparently 70% Don, the House of Don, or the Tuatha De Dannan. And I was like, whoa, but who are the Tuatha De Dannan? So then I trace it all back, you know, Coptic Egypt, northern India, which I've already known this, and I've told you many times these archetypal stories came up, met in Greece, so Hellenistic Greece, which is where I have all my like ancient Hellenistic oracular memories from. And then we became gypsies, and the gypsies apparently floated their boats up through and onto those western islands of the Hebrides. And I also showed a map recently. I don't know if you saw that map of the original names before Skota came to those lands. But basically you've got Hades and Ethiopia and Argos and Judea with the river Eridanus and Jerusalem and Mount Olympus. And so just, you know, remember I shared that. I don't even know who hand drew this in, but I also shared like the star maps that go along with this. And because we just hit the Satis is part of this big star map with the house of Cepheus and Cassiopeia and Andromeda, and all of the star maps were on these ancient lands. And I was like, wow, like, so that was their version of Judea up there. So that's why we have these two dragons that are still fighting, the House of Camelot and the House of Solomon. But what is important is not your haplogroups, but what happened here and how do we get out? Because my dear friends who also have these kind of bloodlines, we want to get out. We don't want to become AB negative vampire werewolves, cyborgs. We're not interested in being here anymore. And I think that all of that script about the chosen ones is highly dangerous. So when I started looking up about like the Holy Grail and the Holy Blood, people are so identified with this. And that is how you get an Antichrist, the Holy Grail, the Holy Blood, the whole Jesus program, the House of David. And that is also like how you are not able to get out of here. So I looked up this one woman who thinks she's like the protector of the dragon line, and she like goes to France and plays the harp and all that stuff. I was like, yeah, I mean, I went to France too. I mean, you know, and I'm just like, I went everywhere. Where didn't I go? But the thing is, why are you identified with that? You're going to be stuck here forever with that identity. What if you just interact with this hologram like a dream and play in it and be playful in it without getting that whole psychopathic, like, I got to marry my daughter so that I'm carrying on the Merovingian line? I mean, that's just crazy. Anyways, I'm at 32 minutes, so I don't want to keep going. But I wanted you to have a good look at me. I always want you to, I don't wear makeup or anything, but maybe next time I will. I never know what I'm going to do. But look at my eyes and look at me and just have a really good look at the ones who went under the hill. The ones who are not trying to be like conquistadors, psychopaths who take over Edom for the Israelites. I mean, that's a program that is creating the evil here, people. We are God's chosen ones. No, I mean, you know what the Nag Hammadi text says? This contest is allowed because the All-Father is sure you will choose to get out of here. You will realize what this thing is, and you will choose to leave. So I'm going to say goodbye and enjoy. If you want to read this book, just so you know, it's very like he's all over the place, and he, you know, but I mean, there is the information of who these people are and that they were all intermarried and they were marrying their own mother, their own sister, their own daughters, because it's the female line, the Mer line, that they were after for their light of man.